This is another sign of the times, an analysis and a commentary. Everything is connected and everything is numbered.
This administration also puts forward a false choice between the liberties we cherish and the security we provide. I will provide our intelligence and law enforcement agencies with the tools they need to track and take out the terrorists without undermining our Constitution and our freedom. That means no more illegal wiretapping of American citizens. No more national security letters to spy on citizens who are not suspected of a crime. No more tracking citizens who do nothing more than protest a misguided war. No more ignoring the law when it is inconvenient. That is not who we are. And it's not what is necessary to defeat the terrorists. The FISA court works. The separation of powers works. Our Constitution works. We will again set an example for the world that the law is not subject to the whims of stubborn rulers and that justice is not arbitrary. This administration acts like violating civil liberties is the way to enhance our security. It is not. There are no shortcuts to protecting America.
My name's Ed Snowden. I'm 29 years old. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton as an infrastructure analyst for NSA in Hawaii.
What are some of the positions that you held previously within the intelligence community?
I've been a systems engineer, systems administrator, senior advisor for the Central Intelligence Agency, solutions consultant, and a telecommunications information systems officer.
One of the things people are going to be most interested in trying to understand who you are and what you're thinking is there came some point in time when you crossed this line of thinking about being a whistleblower to making the choice to actually become a whistleblower. Walk people through that decision-making process.
When you're in positions of privileged access, like a systems administrator for these sort of intelligence community agencies, you're exposed to a lot more information on a broader scale than the average employee. And because of that, you see things that may be disturbing, but over the course of a normal person's career, you'd only see one or two of these instances. When you see everything, you see them on a more frequent basis. And you recognize that some of these things are actually abuses. And when you talk to people about them, in a place like this where this is the normal state of business, people tend not to take them very seriously and move on from them. But over time, that awareness of wrongdoing sort of builds up and you feel compelled to talk about it. And the more you talk about it, the more you're ignored, the more you're told it's not a problem. Until eventually you realize that these things need to be determined by the public, not by somebody who was simply hired by the government.
Talk a little bit about how the American surveillance state actually functions. Does it target the actions of Americans?
NSA and the intelligence community in general is focused on getting intelligence wherever it can by any means possible that it believes on the grounds of sort of a self-certification that they serve the national interest. Originally, we saw that focus very narrowly tailored as foreign intelligence gathered overseas. Now, increasingly, we see that it's happening domestically. And to do that, the NSA specifically targets the communications of everyone. It ingests them by default. It collects them in its system, and it filters them, and it analyzes them, and it measures them, and it stores them for periods of time, simply because that's the easiest, most efficient, and most valuable way to achieve these ends. So while they may be intending to target someone associated with a foreign government or someone that they suspect of terrorism, they're collecting your communications to do so. Any analyst at any time can target anyone, any selector, anywhere. Where those communications will be picked up depends on the range of the sensor networks and the authorities that that analyst is empowered with. Not all analysts have the ability to target everything, but I, sitting at my desk, certainly had the authorities to wiretap anyone, from you or your accountant to a federal judge to even the president if I had a personal email.
One of the extraordinary parts about this episode is that usually whistleblowers do what they do anonymously and take steps to remain anonymous for as long as they can, which they hope often is forever. You, on the other hand, have decided to do the opposite, which is to declare yourself openly as the person behind these disclosures. Why did you choose to do that?
I think that the public is owed an explanation of the motivations behind the people who make these disclosures that are outside of the democratic model. When you are subverting the power of government, that's a fundamentally dangerous thing to democracy. And if you do that in secret consistently, as the government does when it wants to benefit from a secret action that it took, it'll kind of give its officials a mandate to go, hey, tell the press about this thing and that thing, so the public is on our side. But they rarely, if ever, do that when an abuse occurs. That falls to individual citizens, but they're typically maligned. It becomes a thing of these people are against the country, they're against the government, but I'm not. I'm no different from anybody else. I don't have special skills. I'm just another guy who sits there day to day in the office, watches what's happening, and goes, this is something that's not our place to decide. The public needs to decide whether these programs and policies are right or wrong. And I'm willing to go on the record to defend the authenticity of them and say, I didn't change these. I didn't modify the story. This is the truth. This is what's happening. You should decide whether we need to be doing this.
My observation is that the people who are involved in America's national security, they take this work very seriously. They cherish our Constitution. The last thing they'd be doing is taking programs like this to listen to somebody's phone calls. And by the way, with respect to my concerns about privacy issues, I will leave this office at some point, sometime in the next 3.5 years. And after that, I will be a private citizen. And I suspect that, on a list of people who might be targeted, so that somebody could read their emails or listen to their phone calls, I'd probably be pretty high on that list. So it's not as if I don't have a personal interest in making sure my privacy is protected. But I know that the people who are involved in these programs, they operate like professionals. And these things are very narrowly circumscribed. They're very focused. And in the abstract, you can complain about Big Brother and how this is a potential, program run amok. But when you actually look at the details, then I think we've struck the right balance.
Kentucky, Senator, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Good morning.
Senator, you call these government surveillance programs an astounding assault on the Constitution. President Obama calls them modest encroachments on privacy. Take a look.
In the abstract, you can complain about Big Brother and how this is a potential program run amok. But when you actually look at the details, then I think we've struck the right balance.
Senator, in fact, all three branches of government, the Congress, the President, and the courts, have all approved these surveillance programs. How are they then unconstitutional?
Well, they're looking at 1 billion phone calls a day is what I read in the press, and that doesn't sound to me like a modest invasion of privacy. It sounds like an extraordinary invasion of privacy. The Fourth Amendment says that you have to look at, and you can ask for a warrant for specific to a person, place, and the items. This is a general warrant. This is what we objected to, and what our founding fathers partly fought the revolution over, is they did not want generalized warrants where you could go from house to house with soldiers looking for things, or now from computer to computer to phone without specifying who you're targeting.
Well, let's look at the effects of the Internet surveillance program as opposed to the phone surveillance program. In 2009, the NSA was able to intercept emails between an al-Qaeda bomb maker in Pakistan, Rashid Rauf, and a man in Denver, Najibullah Zazi. As a result, they were able to stop Zazi from putting backpacks with bombs on the New York City subway system. The program, according to the government, targets foreigners on foreign soil. You would stop that?
My suspicion is, and a lot of this is classified, so the other side gets to promote their case and we don't get the information, but my suspicion is that this gentleman was targeted because they suspected him for being a terrorist. I have no problem if you have probable cause and you target people who are terrorists and you go after them and people that they're communicating with, you get another warrant. But we're talking about trolling through billions of phone records. We're not talking about going after a terrorist. I'm all for that. Get a warrant, go after a terrorist or a murderer or a rapist, but don't troll through a billion phone records every day. That is unconstitutional. It invades our privacy, and I'm going to be seeing if I can challenge this at the Supreme Court level. I'm going to be asking all the internet providers and all of the phone companies, ask your customers to join me in a class action lawsuit. If we get 10 million Americans saying we don't want our phone records looked at, then maybe somebody will wake up and say things will change in Washington.
I'm going to talk about legislation in a second, but let's talk about the practical effect of this, because defenders of the program say if you want to find the needle in the haystack, you have to have the haystack first. And here's what your fellow Senate Republican Lindsey Graham has to say about you on this issue. In Rand Paul's world, you have almost no defenses against terrorists.
I would say that's an unfair characterization. I want to go after terrorists as much as anyone. For example, we are looking through so much data that I think it makes our fight against terrorism worse. The Tsarnaev boy, one of the Boston Marathon bombers, we didn't know that he went back to Chechnya because we're not doing enough targeted analysis. We have billions of phone calls, and we can't even possibly look at all the data. You know, we have millions of audio tape hours of people, and we can't go through it. They haven't gone through 25% of the audio they have. They're overwhelmed in data, so I think it's just bad police work. Why didn't we know that the Tsarnaev boy had gone back to Chechnya? Because we're not doing good police work, because we're busy looking at the phone records of regular Americans who haven't committed any crime.
All right, let's talk about your suggested remedy. You've talked on the one hand about a Supreme Court challenge, but you also say that you're going to introduce something called the Fourth Amendment Restoration Act. Now, of course, the Fourth Amendment to the Bill of Rights protects us against unreasonable searches and seizures. So try to get a little specific here. I know it's hard. How much would you restrict government surveillance as it now exists? And as a practical matter, do you have any reason to believe that Congress is going to go along with you on this?
I think the American people are with me, and I think if you talk to young people who use computers on a daily basis, they're absolutely with me. They think that your third-party records, so for example, what I spend on my Visa each month, that's my business, and where I spend it, and whether I read conservative magazines, whether I subscribe to Fox News, or whether I subscribe to Yahoo or Google. What I do in my private life is my private life. If you suspect me of a crime, have probable cause. Over the last 30 or 40 years, we've said once you give your records to your bank or your Visa company, that they're no longer private. I disagree vehemently with that. That is a course we have to reverse, because so much of our life now is digitalized that we have to protect it from a snooping government. We've now got a government that appears to target people based on their political beliefs, so I don't want my phone records being given to an administration that I can't trust.
All of this, well, let's pick up on that, because all of this comes at a time when President Obama is involved in scandals, or his administration is, the IRS targeting conservatives, the Department of Justice snooping on reporters. Do you see a pattern? Do you see a connection between the scandals and these government surveillance programs?
Yes, because I think it really makes people distrust their government even more when they're seeing the IRS being used to go after political opponents. But this much power is too much power to give any government. I don't care whether it's a Republican government or a Democrat government. I don't want that much power in the hands of a president, and I think it's very, very worrisome. And I think if the young people around this country wake up and say, enough's enough, we don't want them looking at our phone records, I think we could reverse this. When we went after the SOPA and PIPA legislation that we thought was going to invade the due process of the Internet, people by the millions came out. If we can have that again, people by the millions coming out and saying, look, I want to be part of a class action suit that says to the government, let's hear this at the Supreme Court level. Are you allowed to look at my phone records even though there's no probable cause that I'm related to a crime?
In other words, anyone might be a terrorist now, and all these are more signs of the times. Matthew chapter 10, verse 26. So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. 27. What I tell you in the dark, say in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. Again, it's about what kind of world are we leaving to the future generations? And that should be a very important question to ask.
That's not to suggest that you just say, trust me, we're doing the right thing, we know who the bad guys are. And the reason that's not how it works is because we've got congressional oversight and judicial oversight. And if people can't trust not only the executive branch, but also don't trust Congress and don't trust federal judges to make sure that we're abiding by the Constitution, due process, and rule of law, then we're going to have some problems here. But my observation is that the people who are involved in America's national security, they take this work very seriously. They cherish our Constitution. The last thing they'd be doing is taking programs like this to listen to somebody's phone calls.
Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Benjamin Franklin. And all these are more signs of the times.